Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. My name is Sky Sensei. I hope you guys are having a great time. This is the infamous Insect Glaive element build. Now this took me a couple extra days to put together because elements are kind of in a weird spot right now. So right off the bat, I know there's going to be at least one comment on this video saying, imagine using element in Monster Hunter. But I'm going to counter you with that. Imagine using Narga weapons 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for 365 days. Yeah, I'm not doing that. Element weapons are actually pretty fun, and Insect Glaive is pretty good for them as they are a multi-hitting weapon. So, plus, I like to try some new builds, and honestly, that's part of my enjoyment with Monster Hunter is trying and making new builds. So, here are my current element weapon builds, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. Now, do keep in mind that these builds will change as the game progresses and evolves. We're getting new monsters as early as 2 weeks from now, so things are going to change. The other thing I wanted to note is that crit element is also in kind of in a weird spot right now. It's just not where we want it to be. It's on armor that replaces really good armor with good level 2 slots, so you're kind of either juggling between crit element or attack. So when it comes down to it, like if you're looking for a little bit of extra critical element damage on crit with weapons that don't maximize crit, it's not really worth it right now. Maybe in the future we'll be able to add it on as a little bonus, and I think that's where crit element would really be nice. But for now, let's go through each of these builds. Let's start off hot and heavy here with some fire damage. Now this is the Ryle fire attack weapon. It's from the Bahabra tree. Now I'll show you guys builds that have the WEX, and then I'll show you guys that don't have a WEX2 Talisman. I know that's been a very hard talisman to get in the game, so we're going to show some builds that have WEX2 and then others that don't. So this is a fire build with WEX2. Now this is one of my favorite ones because it actually has really nice fire damage. It also has a little bit of sharpness at white when you get some handicraft. It has really shitty sharpness at the start, so you have to kind of prioritize handicraft on this build, but it also has some nice jewel slots to go along with it. Decent fire damage at 28. I'd say any fire weapon or element weapon that you're using, you need to be above 20 for some good damage. Now it also does have a fire booster on the ramp up part of the weapon, so I think that's actually really necessary. Again, we have a really good raw weapon in this game, the Narga weapon, so if you're using element weapons, be sure you're boosting that element damage because your goal with any element weapon is to hit those high element hit zones. Now there will be some that may disagree with this. You can go ahead and boost your attack a little bit more because raw damage is also very helpful in this game. Most of the time it's more worth it, but I like to have fun with fire, so I'd rather just play around with the elements. Now looking at the rest of the build here, the green numbers again indicate the jewels that are on this. So most of my jewels are attack jewels or fire jewels. You got to fit those in. Most of the builds you'll see here today, I always use fire jewels or element jewels. It's just worth it. They're one slot. There's not a lot of other good one slot stuff except for comfy stuff. We also have level 3 handicraft because again, the Ryle weapons kind of have really bad sharpness at the start, so they're going to need to be boosted. Level 3 handicraft pushes you to white sharpness. You can smack some monsters with some good damage right off the start. Other than that, this is a pretty standard build. You're going to have WEX2 Talisman, and then you finish off WEX with the Zinogre chestplate. And now for most element weapons, they have 0 affinity, so you're going to be roughly around 50 to 60% critting ability. So that's kind of why we also prioritize the attack here, because not all hits are going to be critical. But for the 50% that are, you have critical boost 2 from the Rejang legs. I also have stun resistance at the bottom there. I kind of just like to throw that on. I feel like I get stunned a lot in this game, so I throw on stun resistance. But you can also have Grinder. Grinder is probably a better option for this weapon, but it's up to you. Now, I do have a second fire build here, again with WEX2 Charm. This is the Rathlos weapon. Now this one, I like it, but it also has one big downside, which is the blue sharpness. So again, I boosted this one with Handicraft 3 that will show you in a moment the full build, but it has slightly lower damage on fire, 27 damage, and raw attack is also exactly the same as the Ryle. So this weapon overall is kind of similar to the Ryle. It also has one less good jewel slot. The 3 slot is missing. The saving grace for this weapon is actually the ramp up skill. Now there is a ramp up skill known as Element Exploit. Now this skill works by boosting damage, and all damage, not just critical hits, but all attacks when you hit a weak element zone of a monster. Now through testing, I found that it's only really worth if you use it on these attacks of monsters with 25 or higher fire element hit zones. So for this weapon specifically, if you're using it against a monster with really good element hit zones, this is better than the Fire Boost 1. But overall, compared to the Ryle Insect Glaive, that one still does more damage at the same hit zones of 25 or higher. So overall, I prefer that weapon in that build. But of course, just in case you want to use this weapon, here's the build that I use for it. Again, attack boost is a little bit lower. Fire attack is at max. Gotta max that out. Weakness exploit, pretty much the same thing as the last one, Zinogre. Handicraft as well is at level 3 for this because again, that blue sharpness is pretty low. So you're gonna have to boost it a little bit. Critical boost on the rejecting legs, and again, I have stun resistance again, but you can also put grinder if you like. Now, my final fire build here, if you don't have that WEX2 charm, it's gonna make it very difficult. Even if you have WEX1, go with the other build, right? Put the WEX1 on. You're just gonna lose a little bit of affinity, but at least you have some, right? You'll have 30% instead of 50%. But if you don't have any, then you've got to change the coils. Now the coils are going to change to the Speo armor. This will give you WEX2 on the build itself, but then you've got to change some other things. So the helmet's also going to change to the Zinogre to finish off your weakness exploit. And then you're going to change the chest piece. Now the chest piece you're changing to give you some extra fire attack on the build without using extra jewel slots, because you've actually lost some jewel slots by changing that coil. You actually lose 2 single slot jewel slots and an attack deco as well by changing that coil. So it's a little bit of a loss of an attack, but unfortunately if you don't have the weakness exploit talisman, there's not much you can do. You do have to use the Rathalos gloves to maintain level 4. Level 4 still gives you the 5% attack bonus. That's good enough that you need. So that's pretty much what you're losing. Now I compensated here by losing the handicraft by putting on a Bludgeoner 2 Talisman with a 2 slot deco. Now this is a little bit easier to find, but again it's also pretty rare. But this can also help this build. If you don't have that WEX Talisman, Bludgeoner level 3 will get you extra 10% bonus damage when you have green sharpness, and because you've lost the handicraft on this weapon, you actually get to green pretty quickly. Alright, now we arrive at the WEX2 Talisman Ice build. Now this is the Barioth weapon, and honestly I really like this build. This is probably one of my favorite element builds, and it actually really matches close to raw damage. So this weapon itself comes with 3 jewel slots. It's pretty fantastic, and it has 15% affinity, so you're already a step up from other elements, because most other element weapons don't even have that affinity. Now I boosted this one with attack boost 4. The other 2 rampage skills aren't really that important. The affinity, again, you already have great affinity, so you don't really need it. Plus with a WEX build, you really don't need it. Ice Blight is kind of neat. It only affects and gives you boosted damage when the monster is actually blighted. But unfortunately, if you look at the Hunter notebooks, there isn't a lot of monsters that actually are 3-star affinity to Ice Blight. So it's going to be very situational to use that skill. So I think attack boost level 4, definitely a lot more consistent across damage for most monsters that are weak to ice. Now looking at the rest of the build here, ice attack across the board at the top, level 5, all single 1 jewel slots that you just slot them in, nice and easy. Crit element again could not fit into this build, because this build can actually max out weakness exploit and critical boost without losing too much sharpness. The great blue sharpness of this weapon actually adds on, plus the affinity is really helpful. So you have 65% affinity. Critical boost 3 was actually a lot more helpful here, especially also given that you also boosted the attack from the ramp up skill. So you're getting good raw damage with some good ice damage on top of it. We still do have a little bit of handicraft from the Sinister gloves, so those help you out just a bit to keep that blue sharpness going. Other than that, again, level 1 jewel slots, whatever you want to fill in. I put stun resistance and speed sharpening again to just keep me going in the hunt and not get me from knockdown or stun. Last thing I'll note again here, level 4 attack, so we do have a little bit less attack than what we saw on the fire builds, but that's okay since we're balancing it out with the critical boost again and the higher attack overall on the weapon. At least we're at level 4 here so that we're getting that 5% bonus. Now if you don't have that WEX2 exploit talisman, you're going to have to change a lot of things here. So the helmet is going to change to the Sinister. You want to make room for another attack deco to get back to level 4, because you're changing the coils. The coils get you the weakness exploit too, right? So that you lose 3 attack there, because the Anjaneth coils had 3 attack with a nice deco slot on it. You're going to have to use the Zinogre plate to finish off WEX, and then you're going to also have to use the Rathalos gloves to get some extra attack back on your build. So that'll maintain your high affinity even with the ice weapon affinity, so it's great for this build even without that talisman. Now since you have the talisman slot open on this build, you can put whatever you think will help you here. Attack boost, critical element level 2, bludgeoner maybe, any of those skills will help you get some more attack. So look for skills that'll just boost your attack in general. Now moving on to water, guys, this build is going to look fairly similar as well to one of the fire ones. Watercolor Glaive. Nice glaive to use, minus 10% on the affinity, so it's a little bit less, but it's got a nice jewel slot on it, so we take it. Water boost again, level 4 is a nice element boost. Again, my preference, I love to boost elements when I'm using elements. But also in this case, I didn't really find a use for the dulling or the master rider. Maybe someone else can find a use. If you guys can, go ahead, but I think water boost is the best one to use for this build. Taking a look at the skills here, we can actually boost attack to level 6 because of that extra jewel slot on the weapon. Water attack maxed out again at level 5. Now keynote here that I'll make, my water attack is 1 deco on the Talisman. Now I got lucky because my Talisman came with WEX2 and a water attack. So if you don't have that, take off the stun resistance that you see down in the middle there, take off that 1 deco slot and fill it with the last water attack. Make sure you have water attack maxed. Other than that, pretty standard to the fire build as well. Handicraft level 3 with the Sinister Armor, critical boost on the Rejang legs, and weakness exploit maxed out. Now, if you don't have the weakness exploit Talisman, again, there's a different set that you can use and actually a different weapon as well. Now, the Leapfrog. Now, this is an interesting weapon. It's the Tetradon weapon, and as you can see, there's no blue sharpness at all. So this is actually a bludgeon set that you can use. The Rampage skill here is the water boost. Again, just adding to that element. You could use Dulling Strike if you wanted to try it, but again, my issue with Dulling Strike is that it's only a chance, so it's not as consistent. But again, definitely an option because this weapon has all green sharpness. Dulling Strike is going to be active right from the start. For the rest of this build, again, level 5 water attack, level 4 attack boost, getting that 5% in there. Weakness exploit is maxed again with the Zinogre helmet. Bludgeoner is what I actually used on my Talisman. This is again similar to the other Bludgeoner build I showed before. Level 3 on the Talisman because I have a level 2 Talisman with a 2-slot deco that I added 1 more Bludgeoner deco to. Compared to the WEX builds, this one actually uses a chest piece that gives you water attack 3 on the build itself. So saves you a couple of level 1 slots. I'm fairly sure the Tetra weapon does a little bit less damage than the watercolor glaive even with this set. So if you want the extra damage, definitely go for the watercolor glaive. Alright, onto the Thunder WEX build. Very similar to the Ice build here. We're starting off with a weapon here at 0% affinity, but high element damage. 30 is actually one of the highest element damages that we can get. And again, I used the Thunder boost level 1 only, but it's still a really good element damage. So for any monsters that are actually weak to Thunder, this will be an excellent choice. Everything else here is pretty similar to the Ice build as well. Max Thunder attack, attack boost level 4. We have critical boost maxed here on this build, and weakness exploit maxed here on this build as well. A little bit of handicraft to add that, and speed sharpening and stun resistance again maxed out. Now the reason I went with the critical boost max on this build is because again we have raw damage maxed at 200 attack. That's actually higher than most of the element weapons that we've seen, and that's actually higher than the Nargle weapon with attack boost on it. So good raw damage from this weapon in addition to the Thunder attack. So you want to capitalize on that and make sure you're getting some good damage. We also have handicraft too, just to supplement that, right? To make sure you have blue sharpness for a couple more hits to get some good damage in on high damage. Now I calculated this using 100 hit averages, and I found that having the handicraft level 2 was better than the attack boost level 2 that you get with the Rathalos gloves. Now if you don't have the weakness 2 exploit Talisman, the build looks very similar to the previous ones as well. You're changing the coils there again for the Speo armor, so you're going to have to change the helmet to the Sinister to get that 1 extra attack, and you're going to have to change the gloves back to the Rathalos gloves to get the 3 extra attack so that you maintain the 5% attack buff. Thunder attack, again, you just play around, put the level 1 slots wherever you can find them, you can fit them all in. Weakness exploit will be maxed, and then you have critical boost on the legs again. Handicraft level 1 again comes with the Sinister helmet, so that's again a little bit of extra, but you're going to fall into green much more quicker with this build. Finally, we reach the last element here, Dragon element. Now, Dragon is not the most effective thing right now. We might see some stuff later on, but it's kind of limited in where we can use this, like maybe Rathalos, Raytheon, and maybe the Elders, Ibushi and stuff, but I still would think Raw is better on those guys. But either way, here's the Ibushi weapon. Looks really nice, I gotta say, it's beautiful design. Dragon boost on it as well. Now I personally haven't tested the anti-aerial. I kind of want to, so I'll try to find some time this week. But that could also be a good perk because when I look at the hunter notes, most of the monsters that actually have good hit zones for Dragon are aerial monsters. So this might work, this might not. You can give it a shot if you'd like. Now my main issue with this weapon is that there's no jewel slots on the weapon, so the build becomes very limited. We can get up to level 6 attack, which is nice on the build itself. Dragon attack, you can max out with the level 1 jewels. Critical boost and weakness exploit, I maxed them out again because again we have high damage, there's 200 raw on this build, it's really nice to take advantage of. But that's all you can fit in because the weapon itself has nothing to offer. The big saving grace I'd say on this blade is the sharpness itself. That blue sharpness is huge, so you can get some good raw damage in addition to the dragon damage. Most times in a hunt, you probably won't finish the blue sharpness before a monster moves, so you can maintain blue sharpness all throughout a hunt. This is the only aspect that really saves it compared to the next build that I'm about to show you guys. Now the Royal Insect Glaive also has a dragon version, so it's very similar to the first build of this video that I showed of the fire damage. This one has really good dragon damage, 28 dragon, much higher than the Ibushi blade. The only downside is, again, the sharpness is lower and the attack is lower. The extra damage does come from the Dragon Boost Rampage skill, so it's a little nice. You can also boost the attack if you'd like. Either or, whichever one works to your favor, but I like the dragon damage that comes from this blade. Build wise, yet again, we have attack boost 6, which is nice. Dragon attack is maxed. Weakness exploit again is maxed out with the Zinogre plates. Handicraft level 3 is a must because you need that white sharpness and that little blue extra sharpness. Critical boost 2. And speed sharpening I put on this build. Now that's actually kind of a necessity again because again, very little sharpness. You're gonna run out of white and blue real quick. You'll need to be able to sharpen real quick, maybe even before a monster moves to another region. And that's about it for these element videos, ladies and gentlemen. Dragon without Wex is kind of a pain, so I wouldn't say it's worth it. A reminder again that these will change as the game progresses, so build them up quickly, have some fun with them, you know, and when new monsters come out with new armor, I'll be sure to assess them and I'll let you guys know if there's a nice change to the element meta. Thank you guys for joining, and we'll see you in the next one. As usual, stay safe, be happy, and keep hunting. Sky Sensei is out.